Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news from the culinary front lines. The World Health Organization has officially declared matzo ball soup a superfood, citing its proven ability to cure hangovers, heartbreak, and mild disappointment in your adult children.
It's amazing. Oh my God.
Was that okay?
That was so good.
Did I sell it?
Oh my God, yes.
Did it sound like breaking news? Okay.
It's really good.
My kids always say that, oh, mommy's got her TV voice.
Is that only when they're in trouble?
I don't think I used to know. When they see me on TV, they're like, oh, she's got her TV voice. I don't talk like that.
So tell me, so I'm gonna look at the camera, I'm gonna sit straight, right?
Yes.
And I'm just reading it. Is there something you do with the voice? Just normal?
I don't think so. I mean, just sound.
No, your voice sounded different and much more
Okay, so
serious.
professional.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try and make it
I
professional.
just try to articulate.
Okay, yeah, that's important. Okay. A shocking new study finds Jewish mothers are correct 99.8% of the time. The remaining 0.2% of the time. You see, I'm going.
No, that was good. Keep it going.
The remaining 0.2% of the data was removed after mothers called to dispute it. Is it good?
Amazing.
Yeah?
Amazing.
I did it?
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm going to
Yes, I love my co-anchor, but if she's out next time,
give me a
just come
call.
sit with me.
Yeah, I'll come from London. I'll take a
Yes,
flight.
please,
Yes.
please. That was great.
Hey,
Hen,
how are you,
good
Bianna?
to see you. It's nice to meet here at the
Yeah.
Museum of Jewish Heritage.
Let's talk about Jewish heritage and
Yes.
your upbringing. Where were you born?
I was born in Moldova, which is now an independent country, and was at the time part of the Soviet Union. So my parents and I immigrated to the U.S. in 1980 when I was 18 months old as political Jewish refugees. My dad, I give him credit, was quite the contrarian because when we left, we left through HIAS, the Hebrew Resettlement Agency, and the Jews that were leaving the Soviet Union at the time had to go through the immigration process and apply for visas and go through health checks and background checks. We were in Vienna for a couple of weeks and then in Rome for about a month. And it was in Rome where my dad literally would go and ask all of the other Soviet immigrants where they were going, and the majority of them would say, those that were going to the US, were saying Brighton Beach, New York, some were LA, some Chicago, but predominantly the majority were going to Brighton Beach. So my dad never heard of Brighton Beach, but he went back to my mom and said, we're not going to Brighton Beach. Like, if we're going to move to the US, we're going to actually experience and integrate ourselves into American society. And my dad was an engineer by training, so somewhere where he could get an engineering job. And my mom wanted to go somewhere warm. So they said, oh, well, there's a community in Galveston, Texas that would love to sponsor you. So my parents were like, well, it's Galveston, Texas. And so they looked on the map and they saw that it was very close to Houston. Houston, that they were familiar with because of NASA. And we were in Galveston for about 6 months, like fish out of water. So then my dad got a job in Houston and they're still there. So I grew up in Houston, Texas, yeah.
How was your upbringing in Houston?
It was a very warm and welcoming experience and environment. I mean, my parents literally are the case study in the American dream and people coming with nothing. We came with $75 a person. That was all that we were allowed to come to the US with. My mom was 25, my dad was 30, no English. I mean, they learned here as they were getting their first jobs. Both of them educated, and yet my mom, her first job was mopping floors at a day school so that I could go to day school for free. Our first few homes were sort of in the outskirts of Houston. So I was the only Jewish kid at school. I was the only Soviet Russian Jew at school. And at the time, in the 1980s, and sadly, here we are again, Russia and the Soviet Union were the enemy. And so when I walked into school and there's Bianna Golodryga, I was different, to say the least. But it was character building. My parents, because in the Soviet Union you weren't really allowed to practice your faith. We weren't very religious, but culturally, spiritually, Judaism was very, very important. So I commend my parents because they went out of their way to find a synagogue for us to join. So that was really important for them, for me to go to Hebrew school, to be bat mitzvahed. But yeah, I mean, I remember at elementary school, when you try to just blend in and I wished my name was like Michelle Smith, or I just wanted to have blonde hair and I wanted to be like everyone else. Yeah. And at school, I remember distinctly when we would leave for winter break and the principal, this is an elementary school, and the principal said, wish everyone a great break and holiday, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy Hanukkah, Bianna. I was like, oh no, I'm the one that's singled out. But then later my parents moved into Houston proper. There's a large Jewish community in Houston, so I had a lot of Jewish friends too, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin, where I had a great Jewish friend group as well.
Right. And what made you go into this field of journalism?
I didn't study journalism. I thought I would work in finance. And after, probably 3 months of just rejection, people hanging up the phone on me, I realized, why don't we try something else? And I, again, with an interest in business news, always had CNBC on. My grandmother, I should rewind, my parents and I left in 1980. The rest of my family, very small family, but my grandmother, my aunt, uncle, and cousin moved in 91. And they moved to New York. So they're the ones who went to Brighton Beach. So I said, you know what, I've been in Texas my whole life. I want to go to New York. I'm going to go live with my babushka, my grandmother, and look for jobs there. And I cold called CNBC. I mean, it's crazy. You just pick up the phone and call. And to their credit, the head of HR said, when you're in New York, come visit me. I came in and I said, I don't have any television experience, but I understand the markets a bit. And so they said, well, there's a producer spot that's opening for the stock exchange, because CNBC had a bureau at the stock exchange and we need someone to work there. And long story short, I got the job and I worked there as a producer for 7 years. And then I slowly started making my way on air, doing demo reels. I didn't think I wanted to do that, but was encouraged to. And I started doing both. I was still producing and doing some television at CNBC, and then the head of talent at ABC News, who is now the head of talent at CNN. So I've known Amy and Tellis now for 20 plus years. Called and asked if I wanted to come to ABC. I went to ABC and I was there for 7 years, I believe, and I left in 2014, went to Yahoo News for a little bit, then CBS, then CNN.
Amazing. Yes. been around the block.
Yes, but what I will say is I think having been a producer and having been, not just because I want to impress your crew here, but that is where all of the hard work, that is where all the work happens, because it is the producers, the camera crew, the writers, If you mess up, it's obviously your face and name,
right.
But all of the hard work really, and the collaborative work happens as a team behind the scenes too.
I'd love to hear what you think about this new era of everyone becoming self-proclaimed journalists.
Listen, I think this is the reality that we're in, so I think it's probably irrelevant what I think about it, because this is where the world is, and so much on social media.
I do want to know what you think about it.
No, I think it's helpful when you have people documenting something that's happening real time and posting it on social media. That is helpful for us as journalists to alert us, like, hey, something's going on over here. But again, the goal is not to be first. The goal is to be right. And we see what happens so many times when there are irresponsible reporting, especially now with technology and deep fakes, and where you don't know if that's authentic video. That may have been authentic video, but it may have been from 10 years ago, or it may have been from a completely different part of the world. People have their own motives, and that's what separates you from journalists. So someone may post something, and it may be very helpful for us in a sense of, hey, let's dig deeper and see what is going on over here. And the benefit of working at a company like CNN, where we have resources and journalists and producers and camera crew around the world, is that then they follow up. And then when we get multiple sourcing that, yes, this is valid, then we can go on air with it. But there are many, many times where that's not the case. And the last thing you want to do is rush to put something on air, have people around the world see it, have it go viral, and then only have to walk it back or apologize and say, no, let's correct this. And by the time the correction goes out, that false story has already been around the world multiple times. So that's the danger in that.
Right, yeah, and then everyone has an agenda, and they all have bias, and they're all sharing their biased reporting in a way. I guess also journalists have some bias. We all have.
Well, we're all humans.
Yeah.
We all have our views. You know, we can still vote. We still have our own. But there's a way of leaving your bias at the door and follow just the news and the headlines. And I think working at institutions like a CNN or a CBS or ABC or what have you, there are still certain ground rules.
Right.
I also think what's important for us to remind ourselves of is we still have to adhere to guidelines as journalists because they're there for a reason.
Right.
And if we're losing so much trust, sadly, from viewers who now can cater their own news source in sight, we have to be even more attuned to that and maintain our objectivity as much as we can and strictly try to follow the facts. It's hard, but it's important.
Yeah, and I think you've done excellent work on it. Even though you have your identity and you have things that might trigger you, I think you're very balanced and fair and looking at situations very neutrally and in a nuanced way. That's the parts of newspapers from before the Holocaust.
And some of the most prominent, reputable, mainstream newspapers, from the Daily Telegraph in London, the London Times, the LA Times, the New York Times, again the New York Times, and the headlines were there. It was known what was happening. So people who denied it or say we didn't know what was going on, I mean, you just refute it with these headlines. But I think what's even more of a gut punch and striking is to see where they were placed in the newspaper. So page 12, imagine what could have been more important and urgent for page 1 of that day. But here we are, page 12, 10, 3, 7, 16.
Yeah, so tragic. I mean, to think that something of this scale, but it's also, the numbers are there. It's not like they're saying, something has happened. It's over 1 million people dead, and it's still, I can't even think, I'm saying that I can't think of tragedies that would happen around the world of this scale, but there are tragedies happening of this scale, and they're
look at Sudan.
Right.
It's the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet right now, and that's according to the UN. And, next time you open a newspaper, see where that story is placed.
Yeah, well, you've covered it. I've seen.
We've covered it. I have to say, not nearly enough.
Was there ever an incident that maybe you interviewed someone that you felt like your identity was pressure, that you had to say something, or you had to?
I remember in 2019, or 2021, the last IDF Israel-Hamas war, and I was interviewing the then Pakistani foreign minister.
Oh, foreign minister, right.
Yes, Pakistan was on the UN Security Council at the time. And so he was here in New York, and I interviewed him from the UN and asked him about the likelihood of a ceasefire, something along those lines. And it was, I'm telling you, the first 2 minutes of the interview. Yeah. And I said, what can you tell us about the likelihood of a ceasefire?
Deep pockets.
What does that mean?
Well, they're very influential people. They control media.
And to me, this was just such a glaring trope of Jews. And so I just said, I would call that an anti-Semitic remark.
Well, you see, the point is they have a lot of influence and they get a lot of coverage.
And, the interview sort of spiraled after that, but it went viral too. So that was unexpected. Yeah. Sometimes when you're booking somebody that this person has said certain things in the past. I wasn't anticipating that.
And do you feel like this state of anti-Semitism in the US has reached a tipping point?
I hope it's a tipping point. I'm afraid, I don't know how much worse it can get. It can always get worse. We've been dealing with anti-Semitism for millennia. It didn't start in the Holocaust. It didn't start on October 7th. I always say I love this country. I'm so proud to be an American Jew here. My parents chose to come here. They're the biggest patriots you'll find. But I don't ever recall there being a time where there weren't armed guards outside of a Jewish institution, a synagogue, a Jewish school, a JCC. It was pretty glaring when you look at other houses of worship or other religious institutions, and they don't have that. it's in a sense not normalized, but it's accepted as society. And I think that's very tragic. And I think now looking back, and one of the reasons why Yonit and I wrote this book, Don't Feed the Lion, was because we were floored to find that as we saw yet another spike of anti-Semitism, there were no resources on it for young readers. So it seemed as if there have been books written for young children, kindergartners on Hanukkah. High schoolers maybe learn a little bit about the Holocaust, but nothing really in between for, for my kids' age and what is really an impressionable age group that still talk to their parents, ask questions, very curious, have access at my kids don't, but they have access to phones. Like, you can't hide them from what's going on. And yet when they're looking for resources, when they're trying to ask the question, why is there anti-Semitism? Why do I feel like people don't like me because I'm Jewish? Why should I be worried about wearing a Star of David? There's nothing for them to turn to. So I'm not saying this is the panacea, but at least it's something and a start.
Yeah, so tell me about the book. I have a copy here. It's coming up this week, right?
Yes. Our first book. So Yonit Levy and I wrote it together. Yonit is probably the most prominent Israeli news anchor, and we've known each other for many years and have been friends. And she spent her formative years growing up in the U.S. This wasn't a story that originated after October 7th, but the seed was planted before, when there were celebrities, athletes that were posting anti-Semitic remarks and tropes on social media, and it seemed like everyone was apologizing for them but them. And you raise your kids to know that there are consequences for actions. And so this was after the murder of George Floyd, when the country had gone through this massive social justice movement, and rightly so, and resources were provided to children at school, conversations were had about racism and systemic racism around the world, and yet there was two very prominent figures made back-to-back anti-Semitic comments, maybe got a slap on the wrist, and no one, it was sort of swept under the rug. And my son, who was 10 or 11 at the time, was a very, big sports fan. And I remember we were on our way to a basketball game, because this was Kyrie Irving we were talking about, and he played for Brooklyn at the time. And I remember him in the car saying, does he not want me there? Am I not welcome as a Jew? And it was such a heartbreaking moment to just hear my kid ask this question. So I said, I'm going to reach out to the school and ask, because I don't have the answers to this question, how to deal with this. So I'm going to ask the experts. And it come to find out there were no resources. They weren't discussing anti-Semitism at school. There were no books. There were no classes. And so that's when the seed was planted. And then, after October 7th, I knew I needed to hear from Yonit and her podcast about how to make sense of what was happening. And then we started talking, and it didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that we'd probably see another spike of anti-Semitism to come. And so I said, I think it's really important that we write this book together. And it's meant for Jewish kids, non-Jewish kids, parents, teachers, everyone.
I think it should be in every high school and every
I think
school.
It should be in every school.
Yeah,
yes.
I think it should be in
library.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to make it a didactic book, sort of like homework for kids. Oh, let's read a book on anti-Semitism and why it's bad. We wanted it to be a compelling story that just so happened to focus on anti-Semitism in ways other stories and other books, equally compelling, focus on other issues.
Yeah, and it is fun and easy to read. I think it's really interesting how the Jewish community and many within our community are taking on this role of educating about anti-Semitism, while when I think of other minority groups, as a gay person, I know that we often speak about homophobia and we say, gay people don't need to teach people what homophobia is. Black people don't need to teach people what racism is. And yet for Jews, I feel like we constantly are being placed in this, we need to educate. Is it frustrates you to see that we are the only ones speaking up for ourselves? It feels like it.
I don't think it's us me being extra sensitive to anti-Semitism. It's obvious when you look at the statistics and you look at the numbers of the spike in anti-Semitic attacks
And the
and
body
rise in
count,
anti-Semitism.
yeah.
And, you know, I think within a matter of 2 or 3 months, we had the arson attack at the governor of Pennsylvania at his home. You had the Israeli embassy employees who were killed point blank, cold blood right outside of the embassy. You had the people who were protesting in Boulder for hostages and the attack there. So it's obvious what was happening. And then, you know, those were high profile events. And every day you hear about another synagogue that was attacked or threats against Jews.
And doing this sort of work, reading headlines every day and getting some of the most upsetting information that you have to deliver, how do you protect your own energy?
That's an important question because it's day in, day out. First of all, it's important for me to have quality time with my kids, and they see everything you do and they understand. So when they see mom and dad on their phone all the time, it impacts them and they start telling you to your face. So I would put my phone down, spend time with my kids. I don't watch television in the evening. I just don't like to watch news at all or any television. And I run. It's my therapy, my mental, you know, health check. I don't know what I would have done without it. It's also like one of the few things in life I can control and I can have control of. There's so many things around us that we have no control of. And this is one thing that I can. And so I also think it's like a control issue.
No, that's great. Honestly, I exercise and I run in the mornings as well. I feel like to be disconnected from anything. When you run, you can't really do anything.
Exactly.
Like you can't think much. I mean, you do think, but not. It's like
different.
Yeah,
and
it's just different.
You know,
I
I also swim, which is a different form of exercise, but equally, you know, sort of you clear your head, exercise and sleep, especially as you get older. I can't recommend it enough. Get as much sleep as you can. I always see you online, God knows what time in the morning.
Does it feel uncomfortable sometimes to be interviewed?
Sometimes. I mean, I sort of know where you're leading and, you know, where you're probably going to go with some questions. So I'm probably overthinking it a little bit, but it's a good experience.
Yeah. Experience what your guests experience.
Yes, now I'm a little more sympathetic to the guests.
Yeah. Do you get nervous sometimes on the news?
I mean, at times it's nerves, but it's good nerves. They give you energy. So I think it's always good to be a little nervous ahead of an interview. It keeps you alert. It keeps you grounded. And it makes you do your work all the time and be prepared.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bianna, before we finish, I want to ask you, you know, you're a mother, you're an advocate, you're an author, you're a news anchor, you're a journalist, doing so much, and you're also Jewish.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It means so much. It makes me appreciate everything that I'm hoping to instill in my kids. I've learned from them. And, you know, then I look at my parents who brought me to the best country in the world because of persecution in another country. And it reminds me and reinforces the need to fight for who we are and to love everything about ourselves and our children and our culture and our heritage and our Judaism.
It's amazing. You're such a great role model for the Jewish people, and I really appreciate
thank you. So are you.
spending time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
This was great.
In Texas today, panic has erupted after reports of a statewide brisket shortage. Local officials are urging residents to remain calm and to stop blaming vegans. Emergency crews have been dispatched to distribute emotional support kugel.
This was so
Is that
good.
okay?
Oh my God.
I like this story. The writing helps. That's the secret sauce to good storytelling and anchoring is having incredible writing.